Welcome back, everyone. So the episode begins in this strange place, which, you know what, screw it, let's call it what it is, the Sword of Akasha, which at this point in the story means absolutely nothing to us. In fact, I don't think the show even reveals the name of this place until well into the second season. But even still, since it's our second time here, with the first time being briefly at the end of the first episode, I figure we might as well call it what it actually is. And while we're not going to dive into its purpose or anything like that just yet, we can still use this scene to infer some things about it. Though, honestly, not much outside of the physical elements, and even that's going to be pretty limited given we're not privy to viewing the entire structure during this scene. Because there's a pretty significant aspect of this structure that's not made obvious here and that won't be revealed for a while. But regarding what we can see, this place is honestly pretty stunning. Mostly because of the lighting and this view, but also these ruins give this place a very unique feel when compared to everything else that we've seen thus far. And what I mean is, this place feels separate from the world we've been inhabiting for the last 5 episodes. As if somehow untouched by modern technology, and yet clearly inhabited by the leader of one of the most technologically advanced countries in this world. And I guess, given that last sentence, there's really no point in keeping things under wraps in regard to who this guy is. Especially since, if you're at all familiar with royal etiquette, it's made very obvious exactly who he is when this other person walks up and says,
"Your Majesty, the remains have arrived."
And if you're confused by what I mean by royal etiquette, referring to someone as Your Majesty is exclusive to the monarch of that land. Or, in this case, the Emperor. So yeah, the dude from episode 1 who said,
"A convergence with a Ragnarok connection, so the myth is beginning once again?"
was actually old Papa Britannia himself, aka Lelouch's father. But yeah, in regard to what that other guy said, it seems obvious enough that the remains he's referring to are that of Clovis's. And this is backed up by the fact that, in response, the Emperor says,
"I was just conversing with Clovis, actually."
Which is an interesting response, because does he mean that metaphorically or literally? Because in a show where a boy can shoot mind control rays out of his eyes and a girl can take a shot through the mind and just walk it off, it can be hard to tell. And it doesn't help that old boy who delivered the news seems confused too.
Huh?
But really, given the Emperor's appearance during that fever dream from episode 1, it's much more likely that he means that he was literally conversing with him. Which is interesting. Anyway, in response, Charles says that the project must proceed without a moment's delay, which, you already know, we will get to it. But with that being said, Stage 6, The Stolen Mask. So the episode proper kicks things off back at Ashford, where we see that Suzaku is, well, not exactly fitting in.
What's an 11 doing here?
He was a suspect in Prince Clovis's murder. You don't really think he's a terrorist, do you?
And I mean, this is all to be expected, right? Like, he was accused of murdering a prince. Sure, someone else took credit for it, but as one of the students says,
Suspicious enough to arrest though, right?
which is a fair point. Like, you had to have done something to make them suspect you. I mean, he didn't, obviously, it was all bullshit from the jump, but still, the damage to his reputation isn't just gonna disappear. And really, what makes it even worse is that right now he's at a private school for Britannians, meaning that these are all privileged kids to some extent. Especially with people like Millie and Colin, who are either former nobility or nobility adjacent. So when kids like this are confronted with an honorary Britannian, I mean, there's going to be a higher chance that they might get a little out of pocket. Like, for example, a lot of these students aren't even calling him an honorary Britannian. They're just referring to him as an 11, which, as far as I'm concerned, feels a little bit like a slur, since he's not technically an 11 anymore, he's an honorary Britannian. Now, I do want to point out that as everyone is talking about Suzaku, we see Colin looking kinda sad given how the conversation is going. Because, I mean, she can sympathize with him. She may not really like him, seeing as she put her life on the line trying to rescue him, only for him to then go right back to the Britannians, but still feels bad. But yeah, from there we turn our focus to the student council to get their thoughts on Suzaku.
An 11 here at school?
So Nina, just Nina, just gonna leave it at Nina for now, starts things off by referring to our boy as an 11, which again feels a little bit like a slur. And in response, Rivel corrects her by saying that he is an honorary Britannian, and as such, it really shouldn't be a problem that he's here. That the whole point of being an honorary Britannian is that you're afforded the same rights as native Britannians. But she responds by saying that even still, she feels uncomfortable around him. And while part of me feels like her discomfort is understandable given the murder charge, we'll soon come to find out that her discomfort has less to do with that and more to do with the fact that he's a number. But after Nina's comments, Shirley ends up responding to Nina, smiling as she says that he doesn't seem scary to her before trying to walk up and introduce herself. And I love Shirley, y'all. Like, she is best girl for sure. But in response to her trying to approach Suzaku, Rivel actually stops her, telling her that he just got here and that she ought to give him some space. Now from there we see Lelouch get up and walk past Suzaku without saying anything, implying that they're not going to make their relationship known. Which makes sense, especially given the fact that Lelouch and Nunnally are currently in hiding. But as Lelouch gets to the door, we see him pull up on his collar, and as a result of that, Suzaku does one of those typical anime gasps. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Now, after this, we transition to the rooftop, where Suzaku finds Lelouch waiting for him. And apparently the whole collar thing was a little secret gesture that they had between themselves as children that meant meet on the roof. Now, with both of them here alone, they go on to briefly discuss a few things, starting with them both saying how happy they are that both of them got out of that whole situation alive. This is then followed by Suzaku asking Lelouch if he knows what happened to the girl, to which Lelouch obviously lies and says that he doesn't. And then lastly, Lelouch asks Suzaku about what happened with his court-martial, to which Suzaku goes on to explain that someone saw to it that he got a proper investigation. And in addition to that
person said that a 17-year-old should be in school.
And as he says that, we see the scene transition to Princess Euhpemia, implying that she's the one who set all this up. And this immediately stood out to me because this acts as a form of foreshadowing for things to come in regard to her character. And I guess, mild spoilers ahead, kind of, because the reason I'm saying that this is foreshadowing is because here we see Euhpemia trying to do something good, something kind, while not completely understanding the ramifications of said action. And for those of you who've already seen the show, y'all know what I'm talking about, episodes 21 and 22. But in regard to this episode, from her perspective, she very likely thinks that this was a great idea. Like, let's put Suzaku in school, and not just any school, let's put him in a really good Britannian school, because as an honorary Britannian, he should be allotted the benefits that come with that. But the thing is, she didn't consider, or hell, maybe she doesn't even realize, given how disconnected she is from the lower echelons of Britannian society, but a lot of people are fearful of, or just downright hateful towards honorary Britannians. Like, I know she probably doesn't have a whole lot of insight on this, given she just got to Area 11, and prior to that she was in school herself, but there was deadass a whole group of people who wanted to do away with the honorary Britannian program in its entirety. And hell, I guess that's another thing that we should also keep in mind as we move forward. The fact that she just doesn't have a great understanding of the political landscape in this world, which also ties into episodes 21 and 22. But yeah, getting back to my original point, by sending Suzaku here, she's kind of done more harm than good in the immediate sense, as he's now going to be forced to deal with some pretty significant prejudice and racism from the student body. But more on that later in the video. So, okay, the scene continues with Euhpemia looking at a collection of paintings, and it's worth noting that here we see a painting of Lelouch, Nunnally, and their mother, Marianne. And this is a small thing, but I like that no one actually says that it's them. I mean, it's fairly obvious, but I just like when a show doesn't spoon-feed its audience everything. Like, I'm glad there wasn't a placard at the bottom of the image that had their names, or that neither Euhpemia or this other nobleman mentioned the fact that Lelouch and Nunnally are in one of the paintings. Instead, you just need to be paying attention, otherwise you'll miss some pretty key information. Because it isn't until after we see the painting that Euhpemia says,
"Were all of these painted by Clovis?"
And this is part of what I was alluding to earlier when I spoke to how Clovis was very likely telling Lelouch the truth when he said,
"I'm overjoyed, Lelouch. What a blessing to have you back."
Because, as we can see here, he has a painting of him up in his art gallery. And I know it's not anything major, but it does speak to the idea that he wasn't lying when he said that. And there'll be another pretty big indicator later on, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Such gentle colors, very much akin to my brother.
And that's such a crazy thing to hear, because that is not the side of him that we saw at all. Gentle? More like brutal.
Destroy Shinjuku Ghetto! Leave no one alive!
But still, this is noteworthy because we saw Clovis. We saw the kind of person that he was. And not even just with the Shinjuku incident, but before that too. Like when he did that broadcast while he was at a party, and then after the performance, he went on to nonchalantly refer to himself as an actor.
After all, the Viceroy is the marquee actor of Area 11. I need to change costumes quickly.
Like he was a prick before and during the Shinjuku incident. But having said that, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with Euhpemia. Because people can be multifaceted. We all contain multitudes. I mean, just think about how Nunnally might describe Lelouch. She'd probably say that he's gentle too. And while I do agree with that to some extent, I also know that he can be pretty brutal himself.
My plan worked, didn't it?
But moving on from there, we head to a battlefield, where we see Cornelia's forces going at it with a sect of the Japanese resistance. And I say Cornelia's forces, but really, she's out there getting a lot of this shit handled by herself.
What the? Is that Cornelia?
I love how people just seem to know that it's her. I mean, it's probably because her nightmare frame is pretty unique. Like, yeah, she has a Gloucester, but not only is it a unique color, but it's also got these big-ass ears on it, which I think are supposed to be horns? I'm not entirely sure. But to me, they look like elf ears. But regardless, this is the first time we get to see Cornelia in action, because previously we just saw the aftermath of her onslaught when she blew that palace up. But here we see her out in the field, and I would dare to say that her skill in this nightmare honestly comes second only to Suzaku's Lancelot at this point in the story. And that's pretty high praise, because we have to remember that that's still a Gloucester at the end of the day, meaning it's a 5th gen nightmare frame compared to the Lancelot, which is a 7th gen. Now, in regard to what she's doing, the first thing she does is launch herself into the air, and once she's airborne, she unleashes some rounds from her assault rifle, which immediately takes out one of the turrets. Then, while still airborne, she fires one of her slash harkins, thus taking out another turret. And then, again, while still flying through the air, she positions herself and fires her other slash harkin, thus taking out a third turret. But wait, there's more, because with both slash harkins firmly planted into the ground, she then, through a very precise pulling method of retracting her slash harkins individually at different rates of speed, she strategically manages to avoid gunfire until landing on a 4th turret and crushing it. Like, the whole thing is pretty much the definition of badass, honestly. Just like it's badass, and also extremely disrespectful, that when Darlton asks her if she wants him to accompany her inside the stronghold, she responds by saying,
"Not for this level of resistance."
Even though the level of resistance is a whole ass mountain full of soldiers and rebels. Like, damn, girl. And then, once she's in there, she says,
"Surrender at once, you feeble-minded 11s!"
And it's just like, the disrespect, man. But anyway, they then start firing on her, but weaponry like that don't mean shit to a nightmare. In fact, it's so ineffective that she doesn't even acknowledge that they're attacking. She's just looking around trying to see if Zero is here. And once she realizes that he's not, well, she goes ahead and wraps this one up.
Vermin. Rot like the filth that you are!
Whew, but okay, let's move away from this particular bloodbath and instead check back in with our friends at Ashford.
Hi, Lelouch. I returned home.
So the scene starts off with Nunnally coming home and greeting Lelouch, who responds by saying that he has a present for her. And as she waits for something to happen, we see Suzaku pop around the corner and, without saying anything, he just goes over and grabs her hands. And in response, well, this happens.
This hand. Thank heaven. I just knew you'd be all right.
And, okay, two things. One, this is actually really sweet. Honestly, I feel like I'm such a softie these days, because shit like this didn't used to get me all emotional, but whatever. The second thing is that I feel like Nunnally's got some kind of superpower or something. Like, she hasn't interacted with this dude in 7 years, damn near half a lifetime ago for her, and yet all it took was touching his hand for her to immediately know who it was. Like, that's low-key superhuman. And there'll be more evidence that points to this in the future, but in kind of a different way. And I'm referencing some stuff from R2 specifically, so we'll have to wait a bit before we get into it. But from there, the three of them go on to have dinner together, and most of the conversation isn't too important, but I do want to take note of the fact that when Suzaku tells them that he's still in the military, he says,
Don't worry, I've been reassigned to the engineering corps. It's a lot less dangerous.
And I'm pointing that out to show that Lelouch isn't the only liar here. Now, after that, Lelouch gets up to put away a dish, and Suzaku almost instinctively tries to help him with it. But Lelouch is like, nah fam, we got you this time around, saying that last time they were his guests, but this time around he gets to be theirs. But something that really stood out to me is the fact that Lelouch also says,
It's funny, you're a lot more mellow than you used to be.
And he's right, because despite Suzaku seeming pretty mellow or just sad at the beginning of the series, before all of that, dude was kind of a little shit.
He's a hostage, and I'm the heir to the Kururugi name. He has no right to even speak to me.
And that little snippet was from an audio drama, stage 0.515, the Uninvited Guest. And there's actually like 5 of them that focus solely around Suzaku and Lelouch, with other characters popping up every now and then too. But yeah, when they were younger, Suzaku definitely had a temper on him. Like the first time he and Lelouch met, they got into a fist fight and Suzaku whooped his ass.
I couldn't breathe. I just lay there at his feet, collapsed and groveling.
But it's funny because this is definitely some young boy type of shit, because my initial interaction with one of my really good friends actually started because we got into a fist fight. Just literally boys being boys. I will say though, something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense is that Suzaku responds to Lelouch by saying that he's a lot more rough around the edges these days. And while I won't argue that Lelouch does come across as much more regal in those audio diaries I just mentioned, this line still doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because one of the last times Suzaku saw Lelouch, he was shouting and saying,
I will one day obliterate Britannia!
If anything, I'd say he's a bit calmer these days, if only barely. Now from there, Lelouch moseys on into the other room, and C2 is just chilling there like it's no big deal, as if Suzaku couldn't just easily come strolling in here at any moment. But, okay. Anyway, she recognizes Suzaku from the Shinjuku incident and asks if it's a good idea to keep him around, to which Lelouch says that she doesn't need to worry and that he's a friend from his past. Basically implying that while it is a risk, it's one that he's willing to take because Suzaku is important to both him and his sister. And yeah, from there we leave Ashford and check in on old bitch-ass Jeremiah, who is, interestingly enough, in jail. And I always thought it was odd that immediately after being jumped by his own men, he gets thrown in jail. I mean, it makes sense that he's in jail, don't get me wrong, that whole orange situation was ridiculous, but it's interesting that it took so long for it to happen. Like last episode, which was only, a couple days ago, he was still at his post. But if I had to guess, it was probably Cornelia who ordered him to be detained, especially given the fact that old Gilbert Guilford is the one checking in on him.
You're getting out, Jeremiah.
Lord Guilford.
And okay, I actually ended up doing a little extra research on this, and it turns out that Guilford was the one to arrest him too. And I found this out by way of stage 5.831, Orange Peel, wherein Jeremiah and Valletta meet up with both Lloyd and Cecile as they attempt to find Suzaku and actually thank him for saving them, which I thought was pretty interesting. The whole audio drama is honestly really cool because you have Valletta and Cecile kinda gossiping about their respective bosses, and you also find out that Jeremiah and Lloyd were actually classmates back in the day. Like, I'm telling y'all, the audio and picture dramas are pretty cool in regard to adding some extra lore for the series. But yeah, the biggest reveal in that audio drama is the fact that as Jeremiah is on his way to meet with Suzaku, Gilbert actually shows up and arrests him.
Ah, it's you, Lord Guilford. Huh? Oh, wait. What are you... Hey, hold on! Please, let me explain! I'm innocent! I'm innocent!
And I'm not gonna lie, again, I almost feel bad for him. But at the same time, like, bruh, you reap what you sow. So, yeah. Anyway, getting back to this scene, Jerry's actually really happy to see Gilbert. But, the feeling is not mutual. I mean, he's pissed at Jeremiah, and all of the purebloods, really, for fumbling the ball so hard on this whole Zero Suzaku situation. And while Jeremiah is getting out, Gilbert thinks that he, specifically, should have received a harsher punishment for the whole orange situation, even going as far as to call him...
Orange boy.
That's definitely gonna stick. Now, while old Orange Boy is gonna get released, he's not getting off scot-free, as he's being given the option of either starting over as a regular pilot, which, mind you, is a hell of a demotion. Like, just to clarify, dude was a Margrave, which is like a military commander or governor rank, and he's being demoted to just a base level pilot. But, I mean, to be fair, like I said, he does have two options. So it's either starting over as a pilot or...
cultivating an orange farm.
Looks like old Gilbert has a sense of humor. And I love the irony of that punishment, given the fact that... well, we'll come back to it. Eventually. Anyway, from there we transition back to Ashford, where we see that Suzaku is headed home after spending the evening with Lelouch and Nunnally. And everything looks like it went pretty good. Right up until Suzaku tells Lelouch that, despite the good time, the two of them shouldn't be seen in public. But it's not because he doesn't want to, because I imagine he very much does. But the fact of the matter is, Lelouch being seen hanging out with an honorary Britannian is gonna invite questions. And Suzaku knows that that's not the kind of heat that he and his sister need in their lives right now. Because, remember, they're presumed dead by the Empire, for their own safety. So Suzaku's reluctance in regard to coming back is just him trying to look out for them. But unfortunately, Lelouch doesn't take it that way.
Doing it again, huh? Everyone's needs but your own.
Again?
And Lelouch saying this catches Suzaku off guard, which makes sense. It's like, again? But we get what Lelouch is referring to, and that's the fact that Suzaku did the same thing after Zero rescued him, voluntarily making the sacrifice of going back so that others wouldn't have to suffer. And I could see why that would be a little frustrating for Lelouch, from both a practical and emotional standpoint. Practically, he would ideally like to have Suzaku by his side as he continues down this path. Like, there's even lines in the picture drama stage 0.97 that I had mentioned last time that outright confirm this. And unfortunately, this picture drama is only in Japanese, so you, yes, I'm talking to you, stop whatever it is you're doing in the background and read along real quick.
俺が信用できる相手で、俺を絶対に裏切らない奴なんてそうそういるもんじゃない。クルルギスザク。
So yeah, his first thought for someone who he could both rely on and who would never betray him was Suzaku. Like, that man's his ride or die, his day one, his first real friend. Like, their relationship runs deep, and when the opportunity arose for them to become allies, to start working together, Suzaku basically flipped him the bird and went on his merry way. Now, granted, Suzaku had no idea that was Lelouch, so I imagine Lelouch could, kind of get over that, seeing as it wasn't necessarily personal, but this time it's a little different. And this is where I would say that the emotional standpoint comes into play, because this time Suzaku is deadass rejecting him. And while his intentions for doing so are completely understandable, it still has to be rough getting rejected yet again. And we can see by Lelouch's facial expression that he just looks hurt. And while Suzaku is kind of confused as to why he's so upset about this, given he clearly doesn't know everything, he decides to put on a smile and tell him how much fun he had tonight. But as he walks off, he stops for a moment and says,
I'm so glad, I never thought we'd get another chance to talk like this.
And while that first smile he gave felt like it was more to help make things less awkward, this line feels a lot more real. Like, Suzaku was so worried about Lelouch. Like, everything he did that day in Shinjuku was because he desperately wanted to find him. And even as he was sitting in jail awaiting his court-martial, he still wanted updates about him and whether or not he had been found. Like, they legitimately love each other, and it's just really great. For now. Anyway, the following day we check in on Lelouch and Rivel shortly before class, and while they talk, we can see Suzaku coming down the hall on his way into the classroom. And just as they had discussed last night, Lelouch and Suzaku are acting as though they don't know each other. So Suzaku just walks right by them and into the classroom. And once he walks in there, everyone just gets quiet and stares, and it's just so awkward. Like, I feel for the guy. That's gotta be tough to deal with. Though, to be fair, he is taking it in stride. And I guess, realistically, he has bigger shit to deal with than petty high school shenanigans. This man's a soldier. He ain't worried about these kids. However, that being said, it's one thing to deal with people staring at you. It's something else entirely to have your locker broken into and your things vandalized. But more on that in just a second. Now, the next scene takes place a little later in the day, with Lelouch receiving a call from Oogi, who's calling to report the fact that the blood of the samurai faction of their group was wiped out by Cornelia, which is what that conflict was earlier in this episode.
They were the largest group we had in central Japan. It won't be long till she comes after us.
And as we can see, Oogi is freaking out a little bit. And I get it. Cornelia is terrifying. Like, she comes across as a force of nature. And that doesn't even account for the fact that she has a whole military company in tow that are not only the best of the best, because she expects nothing less than that, but they're also just loyal AF. Meanwhile, the JLF, with all its different factions scattered across Japan, it's just, they're not ready to deal with someone like her in their current state. But nevertheless, Lelouch, who's just completely unbothered by his big sister, tells Oogi to chill, claiming that they'll have their chance. And when Oogi tries to push back again, Lelouch promptly tells him that he has to go and that he'll contact him later.
He's getting too overly familiar. Maybe I better cut my ties with them.
And I thought that was interesting because it shows us that while they look to him as, well, their sort of de facto leader at the moment, he does not feel nearly as sentimental about them. They are a side chick, not wifey, and as such, he will drop them in an instant if they keep clinging to him like this. And I get it. I mean, he doesn't see them as being all that necessary. Like, they were in the process of getting their shit rocked when he jumped into the game in Shinjuku. And he was the one that managed to pull off the impossible during the Suzaku mission, with them doing really next to nothing. Like, I love Colin and I like Oogi, but really their jobs could have been handled by anyone given Lelouch's geass power. So from Lelouch's perspective, the only necessary component to success is him. But what's really interesting about this is that this line will hold a lot of significance later on, specifically by the end of the next episode. But okay, from there Lelouch takes note of the fact that outside he can see Suzaku washing some clothes in this outdoor sink. But Suzaku's not out there because it's laundry day or anything. No, he's out there because he didn't want anyone else to see this. Yeah, go back to your ghetto. Wonderful. And you know what I just realized? It was done by the same two assholes that he saved the other day. Like, what the oh my gosh. Anyway, old eagle-eyed Lelouch over here is actually able to make out what it says from all the way up there. And reading that, I mean, it shakes him. Like, we hear him gasp and we see his eyes do that twinkly thing that they do when he's stressed or worried or in an emotional state. Like, seeing his bro deal with some shit like that is, I mean, it's just shitty. And knowing that Suzaku's so adamant about him not helping makes it all the worse. But yeah, from there we head over to Nina, again, just Nina, y'all, who's sitting at her computer when Nunnally rolls on in.
I'm sorry, am I too loud?
Not this time, Nina. Not this time. No, but seriously, I want to take note of the fact that when Nunnally comes into the room, Nina is super jumpy. Like, she got hella startled by just the sound of the door opening. And in response to this, Nunnally goes to her and asks if everything's okay. And Nina says that she's actually pretty scared, stating that the source of her skittishness is the fact that
we have a transfer student in our class now. It's that boy who was accused of murdering Prince Clovis. He's an 11.
And I want to take note of which part of her words were emphasized here. Like, she mentions both the fact that Suzaku was a transfer student and that he was accused of murdering Prince Clovis, basically in the same breath. And while she is holding herself as she says that, which implies a sense of trying to protect oneself, it isn't until she mentions that he's an 11 that she tightens her grip. Which, to me, implies that her fear isn't necessarily stemming from the crime of which Suzaku was acquitted for, but is more so based on the fact that, in her eyes, he's still just an 11. Like, the xenophobia runs strong in this one. And it's actually just sad. Like, to be in here hiding during classes and jumping at the sound of doors opening and holding yourself in fear at just the thought of another kid in your class who, in reality, is the one who should really be hiding from others, it's just like, damn, girl, what happened to you? Like, real shit, all jokes aside, what happened to you that got you like this? Because this shit is not normal. It's messed up. For Suzaku and other honorary Britannians / numbers, sure, because you're a racist, but also for you. Because this is just, I mean, like I said before, it's just sad. But okay, in response to Nina saying this, Nunnally just winces, similarly to the way Lelouch did. And I think it's pretty interesting that since her eyes don't open, we see her brows shake in the same way Lelouch's eyes did. And I thought that was kinda neat, because Lelouch's eyebrows don't shake, so this seems to be unique to Nunnally. So, you know, nice attention to detail. Now from there we fast forward a bit and drop in on Lelouch and Nunnally's place. Or, I guess, Lelouch, Nunnally's, and C2's place. But here we get another Pizza Hut reference, and here you can actually still see the logo on Old Boy's back, but unfortunately not on the box itself. Anyway, C2 brings the pizza on in, but unbeknownst to her, she also brings something else in too. Hey buddy. Now from there we head over to Lelouch, who we see assembling a sort of case for his mask, and likely his costume too. C2 comments on what he's doing, and Lelouch responds by saying that the mask is a physical form of evidence that can really screw him over if anyone finds it. And you know what? Hearing him say that actually had me drawing more comparisons between him and Light. This time in regard to the fact that they both had to go about finding ways to hide the only physical pieces of evidence that could get them in a whole lot of trouble if they were ever found. Now, as Lelouch is getting ready to finish securing his mask, he's interrupted by Nunnally, letting him know that the tea is ready. They then have a quick exchange of words before Lelouch goes off with her, leaving C2 and our little guest alone in the room. But not for long, because after knocking over Lelouch's case, our little feline friend trots out of the room without ever being seen by C2. She's really got to work on her spatial awareness, to be honest. But okay, switching scenes, we go ahead and listen in on Lelouch and Nunnally's conversation as they discuss what's going on with Suzaku. And honestly, there's not much to say about this conversation because it's really quick. Essentially, Nunnally is just voicing her concerns and asking Lelouch if he can do anything to help a brother out. But it's a complicated situation given how Suzaku feels about Lelouch getting involved with him. I mean, obviously Lelouch wants to help him, but I mean, it's just not that simple. Which I'm sure Lelouch would have explained to Nunnally were it not for the fact that, well...
Hey, give that back!
Lelouch?
And let the campus hijinks begin. No, but seriously, as funny as this is, it's also just not great for Lelouch. Hell, who am I kidding? This is one of the worst things that could possibly happen to him right now. Like, to put it in comparison, imagine this was Light and the Death Note, which, what would happen if an animal touched the notebook? Would they be able to see a Shinigami? Sorry, my bad. Wrong series for that sort of question. Where were we?
Cat! Stupid little cat!
Oh, yeah, Lelouch got his mask swiped by the cat, and said cat is now just out on the campus, who I'm just gonna call by his name, which is Arthur, which is yet another, well, Arthurian piece of lore alongside the Lancelot. But yeah, Arthur's running wild and Lelouch is chasing after him. Meanwhile, C2 is just chilling up in his room, watching it all unfold like, did I do that? So from here we enter the second half of the episode, which starts things off with Nunnally explaining to these three that a cat ran off with something important to Lelouch. And given the way Nunnally describes the situation, with her telling them that Lelouch was practically hysterical as he ran after Arthur, the three of them, or really more so Millie and Rivel, are more than willing to help out in the hopes that they might get some dirt on their old pal. Which, I mean, I'd probably do the same thing at that age. Well, maybe not the same thing, but we'll talk about that in a second. Also, just one more thing. Millie, why are you doing a thumbs up to a blind girl? Like, come on now. But okay, moving on from that conversation, we spend a minute or so watching Lelouch chase after Arthur. And it's funny because in his head, he's trying to treat the situation the same way he did the Shinjuku incident. He even mentions that if he had the Black Knight, the terrorist, his words, not mine, then they could surround and encircle the cat. But obviously that's not possible. Neither is reaching out to Colin for help, which is something he does consider for a moment before pushing the thought from his mind, for obvious reasons. He then continues his chase for a bit and even ends up having to use his geass on a couple of students who happen to get a look at Arthur wearing the mask.
Is that the mask Zero wears?
You two saw it? Forget everything you've just seen.
And I do actually appreciate the fact that at least someone saw Arthur in that mask, because him going largely unnoticed is a little ridiculous. Like, this is a campus full of kids, as we'll soon find out, so I feel like more people should have seen this little guy running around. But also, to actually pause on these two girls for a second, I thought it was interesting that we can see the wanted poster for Zero in the background. Like, it's actually wild when you think about it, because y'all ever have wanted posters up in your school? Because I sure as hell didn't. But to get back to the chase, look, we can all agree that this situation is bad enough as is. But unfortunately for Lelouch, it's about to get a whole lot worse.
Cat hunt, everybody! There's a cat loose on campus that needs to be rounded up. Participating clubs will get budget priority.
Y'all, Millie is so wild, but it's honestly a huge part of her charm. Like, look how serious she is as she says this. She wants that damn cat, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to get her hands on it before Lelouch does. And I do mean whatever it takes.
And whoever catches our feline friend will get a big old kiss from one of the members of the cat club.
she's so out of pocket because how are you going to offer these people up like that without even consulting them? Like, girl, what? But after she finishes her announcement, we get to see some of the members of the student council react to the news, starting with Shirley. Threw Shirley completely off with that one. Also, I love Millie's laugh. It's just so unhinged. But after we see Shirley's reaction, we immediately jump to Colin, who's not feeling much better about the news herself.
Members of... Wait, like me?
Imagine not even asking to be a part of this club, and then within a few days of joining, you get put in a situation like this. That's just crazy. But you want to know what's even crazier? The fact that immediately after she says that, we see 14 dudes just pop out of these bushes and say,
It's not gonna be like some lame peck on the cheek, though, is it? Wait, we can choose where she plants it?
I'm sorry, what did that guy just say?
Wait, we can choose where she plants it?
What? I mean, okay, I get it. When I was a kid, I definitely had a crush on Colin. Same from Sango from Inuyasha. I'm more of a Cecile man these days, but I get the allure, is my point. That being said, to say some shit like that in front of her is crazy work. Kids really just be out here wildin'. And the fact that that question ends up getting this response from everyone... is equally as wild. But okay, from there the guys take off to find this cat, leaving Colin shocked and appalled at the idea that one of these guys could potentially be her first kiss.
There's no way that's how I'm gonna get my first kiss!
Which is interesting because I could have swore Lelouch kissed her in that last episode. But I guess he just pushed his face super close to hers without touching it, which is even weirder, honestly, but whatever, moving on. From there, we get some more reactions from different students around campus as they all join the fray to search for this cat, which is, like, bruh, how is Lelouch supposed to catch this cat before all of these people? Like, come on now. Regardless, the sequence ends just as it began, with Millie addressing the student body via the intercom.
And when you do catch that cat, bring what it's carrying to me! To me! To me!
Her coughing at the end just kills me. You just can't help but laugh at it all. Well, actually, you probably can if you're Lelouch, because she is really screwing him up right now.
Millie, stay out of this, will ya?
Now, from there we focus in on Colin for a second as she makes her way through the halls, desperately trying to get the cat herself. And I love how she's forced to slow down when she sees some other students, because, you know, she's supposed to be all frail and sick, which really frustrates her because it's essentially a handicap that she has to contend with. Now, from there we see Colin run into Shirley, who's actually still in her swimsuit because she didn't have time to change, seeing as she's also desperate to get her hands on that cat so that she can avoid having someone possibly kiss her. But after that, we make our way to Cecile and Lloyd for a second, and we see them standing outside the campus listening to all the commotion.
You suppose Suzaku will be alright in here?
Never mind that.
I love how Cecile clearly really cares about Suzaku, and Lloyd just doesn't. No shade on him, though. He's a self-proclaimed sociopath, but I just find the dynamic kind of funny, with him being less concerned about Suzaku and more annoyed by the fact that they've been forced to move everything regarding the Lancelot to a different location. But okay, from there we switch scenes again and find that Arthur has been cornered. And unfortunately, the ones who managed to corner him are Colin and Shirley. Which, I mean, it wouldn't be great if anyone caught the cat before Lelouch, but it's going to be especially bad if Colin's the one to do it, because it put him right back where he was during the events of episode 3. Actually, it would probably be even worse because, unlike the other 99% of the student body, he can't use his geass on her to make her forget what she saw. But yeah, just as Colin is about to go in for the capture, Shirley asks her a question.
Who would you want to get a kiss from? Is there anyone in particular? It wouldn't be Lulu, would it?
So I think I'm going to have to start a running tally on the amount of times Shirley has unintentionally, and hell, I guess in the future also intentionally, saved Lelouch's ass. Because, I mean, this is probably no surprise to anyone, but Shirley distracting Colin like this, well, it ultimately gives Arthur the opportunity to scurry away unnoticed, which is exactly what he does. Now, moving on from these two, we see Suzaku lay his eyes on Arthur, which is probably the second worst person to find this cat, because if anyone could easily catch Arthur, it's definitely Suzaku. Now, as Suzaku chases after Arthur, he ends up running into Lelouch, which results in the two of them going after Arthur together. Well, actually, maybe not so much together, especially since Lelouch tells Suzaku to leave it to him. So, yeah, outside of that, I just want to comment on the fact that while Suzaku's just prancing his way up the stairs, Lelouch is struggling to keep up with him.
Oh, for Pete's sake! He always was an exercise nut.
Poor Lelouch focused all his stats on intelligence and left practically nothing for strength and agility.
So someone's got it cornered, huh? Who's the lucky winner?
So it looks like pretty much the whole school has managed to uncover the location of the cat. So they're all surrounding the building as Suzaku scales it? What are you doing, Suzaku? Look, I get that you want to catch the cat, but this is insane. You got a death wish or something? Oh, look, Lelouch has crawled out the window too, which, to be fair, makes sense. This is already pretty much do or die for him, so he might as well get out there too. So Lelouch ends up losing his grip, and he would have just gone plummeting to his death had Suzaku not been there to catch him. Like, it's actually kinda wild to think that Lelouch v Britannia, Zero, would have died from falling off of a building at school because he was trying to catch a cat. That'd be one hell of an obituary. But fortunately for him, Suzaku was there to save the day. Again. And hell, Lelouch got doubly lucky because while everyone was focused on Suzaku catching and saving him, Arthur just so happened to tip the mask off his head, and it just so happened to roll off the building, and also just so happened to land on this, what is that, some sort of spiked ornament? Well, whatever it is, it's just big enough and just angled enough to catch and secure the mask so that it doesn't fall to the ground. How very fortunate for Lelouch. But whatever, I will suspend my disbelief. It's fine. Now, after a few minutes, we see Suzaku make his way back down with the cat, and when everyone sees him, they just stare at him awkwardly. And I just feel so bad for this kid. Dude did a good thing, and everyone is just being weird about it because he's an honorary Britannian. But I will say that while they're definitely acting weird because he's an honorary Britannian, I think it more so has to do with the fact that he just shattered whatever preconceived ideas that they had about him. Like, not only did he safely retrieve the cat, but they all just saw him risk his own life to save another student. So it's like, oh, wait, is he not a bad guy? But while everyone else is trying to make sense of the situation in their heads, while just staring at poor Suzaku, Shirley says, screw this.
You saved him! Thank you so much, Suzaku!
And this is why Shirley is just the best. This girl is not about judging people because of the color of their skin, but instead by the content of their character. And her willingness to accept Suzaku appears to be contagious, as both Rivel and Millie approach him too.
Yeah, way to go there, new guy!
That cat was carrying something, wasn't it?
I love how Shirley and Rivel thank him, but Millie's just like, I need the dirt on Lelouch, please. But in response to them approaching him, we see him smile. And I just feel happy for the kid. No one deserves to be ostracized at school, especially when they didn't even do anything to deserve it. So, yeah, feels good. Now, after a second, Shirley asks where Lelouch is, and Suzaku says that he stayed behind for something, which prompts Millie to exclaim that he must have stayed behind to grab whatever the cat stole, which is true. But also, how? How'd he get up there and with absolutely no one seeing him, no less? Whatever, don't think about it. So as Lelouch strolls out of the building, we hear Colin asking if the two of them know each other, which makes sense to ask. I mean, they did seem pretty chummy up there. But before they get a chance to answer, fucking Nina, after seeing all this shit go down with Suzaku catching the cat and saving her friend, has the nerve to say,
Yeah, but he's an 11.
And I love that everyone just turns to her like, Really, Nina? Read the room. Even Nunnally gasps and turns around like, girl, if you don't get your racist hands off my chair. But really though, my question from earlier still stands. What happened to you? Like, the fact that even kids outside of the student council are staring at you like, that was a little out of pocket, says a lot. Like, I wish that there was something in the future to properly explain why she is the way that she is, so I could at least say that we'll get to it eventually. But I really don't think that there is. So, just shut the fuck up, Nina, okay? You're as bad as these douchebags, honestly. Anyway, in response to this, Lelouch says,
He's my friend.
And I love it. Lelouch is like, I'm actually fed up with this shit. He knows that Suzaku doesn't want him to put himself out there like that, but he's just had enough, and he's not gonna let his friend continue fighting this sort of prejudice on his own. And I respect that. He then goes on to ask Millie if Suzaku can join the student council, seeing as all students are required to join a club. And while I completely understand that him requesting that has nothing to do with Nina, it does low-key feel like kind of a screw you to her, if I'm being honest. Regardless, Millie's quick to accept the request, meaning that Lelouch, Suzaku, and Colin are all now on the student council together, which is pretty wild, because aside from Lelouch knowing that Colin is one of the insurgents, no one knows anyone else's secret. But yeah, everyone has their own reaction to the news, with Shirley, Rivel, and Nunnally being happy, Colin being just indifferent, really, and Nina seeming absolutely terrified. Like, while they all go on to introduce themselves, she just stays like this. It's just... Ugh. But also, before we wrap this scene up, when it comes to the whole kissing thing, Nunnally provides the perfect, wholesome solution to the problem.
Now come here, you two. Lend me an ear. There you go, the reward Miss Millie promised.
Which I thought was a nice, cute way to end the scene. Now from there, we head to the final scene of the episode, where we finally get to hear from the main man himself, the Britannian Emperor Charles Z. Britannia. And it looks like he has a speech prepared, which he's actually delivering at Clovis's funeral. A funeral that appears to currently be broadcasting throughout the nation and all of its areas, including its schools. And before we get to said speech, I wanted to point out a couple of characters that make a brief cameo here, both of whom are actually Lelouch's older brothers. The first guy's name is Odysseus, and we'll talk about him more in the future. But the other gentleman, the one with blonde hair, his name is Cecile, who you might remember being mentioned back in episode 3 along with Cornelia.
My brother, second Prince Cecile and second Princess Cornelia, they can tell you.
Yeah, that's him. So, as you can probably assume, we'll be seeing a lot more of him later on. But now, on to the speech.
All men are not created equal.
Alright, y'all may have started in what is known as the United States of America in our worlds, but clearly y'all have never heard of the Declaration of Independence. But, sorry, go on.
Some are born swifter of foot, some with greater beauty, some are born into poverty, and others born sick and feeble, both in birth and in upbringing. In sheer scope of ability, every human is inherently different.
I'm sorry, is this a funeral, or what the hell is going on here? What even is this speech? I mean, don't get me wrong, he's technically right, but it just seems like such a strange speech to give at your son's funeral. But regardless, let's actually talk about what he's saying, because I wasn't kidding before, he is technically right. We are all inherently and undeniably different from one another. Some people are born with superior physicalities or circumstances, be it strength, beauty, money, privilege, just as it's true that others are born into situations with inherent disadvantages, such as those born with disabilities or disfigurements, or those who are born into poverty. So I don't really take issue with what he's saying right here, because he is right in a technical sense.
Yes, that is why people discriminate against one another, which is why there is struggle, competition, and the unfaltering march of progress.
And again, most of the things he's saying are technically true. Our differences do often lead to discrimination between individuals, and especially so when it comes to groups of individuals. Our differences can lead to a sort of struggle to make it to the top. They can also lead to competition between individuals or groups, and ultimately that can lead to progress in regard to innovation and advancement. Like, he's not actually lying about anything that he's saying, and I really don't even think it's all that wrong to recognize or acknowledge the fact that people do have inherent differences. However, where I come to disagree with this whole speech is that I don't think that our differences should be what define us. I do not believe that this Darwinistic outlook on everything makes sense because, it's just not as simple as that. He speaks of equality being wrong, and sure, forced equality can be bad, like the idea of manufacturing equal outcomes for individuals regardless of merit. But equality in the sense of creating equal opportunities, or of delivering equality of dignity, or equal protection under the law, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things. Just like there's nothing wrong with choosing cooperation over competition. Because when we work together, we can do incredible things. And this idea of choosing to normalize discrimination against individuals simply because they're different, of creating these systemic inequalities, all that does is create endless opportunities for you to overlook people who could actually benefit and improve society. It disregards the power of education, of support systems, of just human resilience in overcoming adversity. Like, Charles, yes, let's acknowledge that we are all inherently different, but let us also acknowledge that it's those differences that allow us the opportunity to rise above our station together. But that being said, I am speaking on this from the viewpoint of a very different kind of society that's functioning in a very different geopolitical landscape. So, yeah, when it comes to this world, specifically Britannia, I can somewhat understand Charles's stance here. Because while it's not going to be addressed until much later, it is worth noting that the series of events that led to Charles claiming the throne does help to paint a better picture on why he has this sort of outlook on things. But more on that later.
We fight, we compete, evolution is continuous!
Evolution. Such a pretty little word.
So I thought it was interesting that during this speech, we don't hear anyone else talk except for Lloyd, which really just speaks to how uncouth he is.
Even the death of my son Clovis demonstrates Britannia's unswerving commitment to progress.
Oh shit, I forgot what even initiated this whole speech. The death of his son. This is a funeral ceremony, and he only mentions the dearly departed once during his entire speech. That's crazy work, Pops.
We shall struggle, compete, plunder, and dominate! All hail Britannia!
So, I'm not gonna lie. If I was a Britannian standing in that crowd, I'd probably be pretty fired up. Old Charlie really knows how to hype up a crowd. And I imagine that's in part due to that powerful, booming voice of his, courtesy of voice acting veteran Michael McConaughey, who I actually recognize as Schwartzwald from Big O, for those of y'all who know what that anime is. It's another one of my favorites from when I was a kid. But yeah, that's Charles's whole little Darwinistic speech. And the irony of his name being Charles is not lost on me, because that had to have been intentional, right? Anyway, something I didn't really get to go over was the reactions from everyone during the speech. And none of this is overly important or anything, but it does help to cement or reinforce certain characters' personalities. Like how Lloyd was sort of mocking Charles's use of the word evolution earlier. Now, most characters just have a sort of stern or solemn look on their face, like Millie, Cecile, Jeremiah, and Valletta, while others seem to have more of an emotional reaction, as identified by the twinkle in their eyes, such as Shirley, Cornelia, and Euhpemia. And also Oogi and Colin, though I imagine their feelings aren't stemming from any sort of empathy or sadness like Shirley and the two sisters. Now, outside of them, a few interesting outliers pop up, such as Rivel, who looks like he really just doesn't give a shit about this and is just more amused than anything. And not in an asshole kind of way, but just like in a kid who doesn't really care about all of this kind of way, which serves to exemplify his more carefree attitude when it comes to life. Then we have Nina, who has her head pointed down as the Emperor speaks, which I thought was interesting, kind of playing into how meek of a person she is. Then we have Detard, who, while everyone is focusing on Charles's speech, he has his attention turned to the footage of Zero, again serving to showcase where his priorities, and maybe even his allegiances, lie. And then we turn to Suzaku, who, at the end of the speech, once everyone starts chanting "All Hail Britannia," gets a sort of determined look on his face as he does that old Arthur meme. The aardvark, not the cat. But jokes aside, it just seems like in hearing this speech, he feels more determined when it comes to his goal of trying to get this nation to change its ways. And he's not the only one. But before we get to our last reaction, I want to take a second to point out the second to last reaction, which actually comes from C2.
So, this is Lelouch's enemy.
And this one is kind of weird because, I mean, knowing what I know about R2, it's just, you know, okay, whatever, we'll come back to it. Anyway, the last reaction we get is obviously from Lelouch, and it's not an emotional one like we've seen a few times in this episode, but instead one of determination, as his eyes are dead set on accomplishing his goal of getting revenge on the father who betrayed him all those years ago. But we'll talk more about that next time. For now, well, roll credits. Anyway, that's the end of this video, but before we go, I just want to give a shout out to all the folks over on our Patreon. I want to thank all of our admirable assessors, our invaluable investigators, as well as our remarkable researchers, like Arrow Falcon Green, Game and Alchemist, Gary Huang, Jorge Ochoa Reyes, Legend Dragon, Mitch Corcoran, Pellets, Staff of the Crystal Serpent, The Best, Trinity Schiffer, Tyrant's Link, Vanellian, and Yggdrasil. And lastly, a special shout out to our official overanalyzers. Thank you Archangel89, Asia, Birdbath Keeper, Bob Van K, Cavarax XE, Chicken Wugget, Cody for Now, Seamard, Croy Raiden, Emilia, Psychedelic Palimpsest, I Am the Blonde Asshole, Jack Witt, Joey Helbig, Josh Thompson, and Matt J. Dave. I just want to say thanks again to all of y'all for helping make these videos possible. But yeah, if you liked this video, then consider dropping a like. If you really liked it, then consider subscribing. And if you just loved it and want to support the channel, then consider joining the Patreon. Anyway, that's it for this time. Until next time, friends, peace.